So at the end of the season last year, I kind of created a Pareto diagram with those bar graphs, kind of illustrating where the greatest number of injuries occurred in what areas, and then we knew that's where we should kind of put our resources. And so once you've identified that, then you start looking at applying things like the 5 whys in the Ishikawa diagram, looking at everything from the athletes themselves to their equipment to maybe some of the coaching strategies involving people and all the different variables that may contribute to those injuries.
Hi everyone, I'm Tracy O'Rourke.
And I'm Elizabeth Swan.
And we are from GoLean6Sigma.com, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast, where we bring you fabulous apps, polls, news, books, and people so you can build your problem-solving muscles.
And I'm going to shoot this napkin into that wastebasket from here. You think I can make it?
I sense your interview with Chip Schaefer might have influenced you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so don't roll your ankle on the way to our private dining room.
Got it. Oh, and you missed. So, we've got the Chicago Bulls, and what else on the menu today?
This is a great day, Tracy. First, we find out what happened when Chip Schaefer of the Chicago Bulls brought a fishbone diagram into the NBA. Then we'll announce our new poll for Lean Six Sigma practitioners about how they solve common challenges to getting improvements done. And for Lean Six Sigma industry news, we'll talk about a new resource publication from a nonprofit that exists to help other nonprofits. And lastly, one of our listeners asks, what's with the belts? So I confess, Tracy, I am slightly starstruck with the whole NBA thing.
I know, I can tell. You might have a new celebrity crush even.
I do.
Just kidding. Remember to stay tuned for this month's coupon code in order to get a discount on GoLean6Sigma.com's online training.
Let's get to our poll.
So which challenge does this latest poll address, Elizabeth?
So Tracy, you and I hear about challenges around improving processes constantly. And we both work with people who are working hard to improve processes, and they do have success, right? These guys do great work, but sometimes they run into barriers. And in our poll, we explored one of the biggest issues, which is low to no leadership support. That was in our last episode. And this month, we're exploring one of the other issues that people reported, and that's not enough time to get their work done, their process improvement work. So this month, we want to hear from listeners about what they consider the best way to schedule and get improvement work done. So we're looking for some best practices, and this will be a poll that will help your fellow listeners. So please chime in. And the poll question is, what is your preferred method of making time for process improvement? So we want to know how people best make time for process improvement. Is it A, schedule an hour a day at the same time? B, set up regular weekly or bi-weekly team meetings? C, carve out a whole day for it every so often? D, catch up on weekends? I hope this doesn't win.
Me too. That's not my favorite. I'm not voting for that one.
No. Or E, fit in as my workload permits. So take a second and answer the poll, and we'll give you the results in next month's episode. Thanks for that.
Do we get to share what ours is, or are we going to wait till next week?
What's yours, Tracy?
Well, I honestly like C the best. Carve out the whole day, because you actually get more done in a day when people are focused. I bet you that's not people's favorite, though.
I don't know if it's a whole day. I almost carve out, let's see, here I am giving an answer that's not on there. I carve out a half day. Carve out a half day and turn everything off. You have to turn email off. That's like the critical sort of caveat to all of that.
Yeah. I kind of feel like scheduling an hour a day is like, squirrel, up, I forgot what I'm supposed to be doing. What? That happens to me a lot.
Emails are squirrels. I think that's exactly what we've got.
I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. We'd love your feedback. Please leave us a review on the iTunes or on our website, and don't forget to subscribe. Up next, it's in the news. It makes sense, but I was surprised that there was a nonprofit whose mission was to help other nonprofits.
It's true. When we first heard about this organization, it took a few beats to understand all the areas they address, and in a word, many. So that's why this month we're highlighting the Center for Nonprofits, an Ohio-based agency that's in the news. The shorthand for their title is C4NPR, which sounds kind of like either C3PO or a formula for explosives. And they are powerful, right? So what's great about this group is that they are not just a nonprofit. They exist to provide other nonprofits with access to experts in the nonprofit world. They screen and select the best vendors and turn them into partners. And they host trainings and webinars and workshops. So they've become a hub, and they have a rich archive of really useful and targeted information. And the resource catalog they've published contains original material from all these experts. There's things like, 5 ways to win over the media, successful fundraising, lots of great tips on grant writing. The guide contains readily available infographics, blogs, and videos. The links are right in there. You can click right to the infographic or right to a short video of that person describing what they do, which is really cool. There are over 15 different experts, and total transparency, C4NPR recently partnered with Go Lean Six Sigma to offer process improvement resources to the nonprofit world. So we are their selection for Lean Six Sigma. We've got lots of free stuff, and they're helping to bring that to more in this industry that really needs it. So great resource for nonprofits, lots of free resources, and a list of improved experts. We'll provide you a link so you can download the catalog for yourself.
I love it. I actually love the fact that there is a group to help nonprofits. It's a nonprofit helping nonprofits. That's awesome. And I love helping nonprofit organizations myself. There's such a need for process improvements because resources are so limited sometimes. And I'm actually spending some time helping a nonprofit in San Diego. It's called Feeding San Diego now. It used to be Feeding America. And I'm really enjoying my time helping them improve their processes, because that means that they're going to be feeding more people in San Diego. And who doesn't feel good when you say that?
No, it's great. And I've already forwarded this resource to my local nonprofit, the Cape Cod Child Development, and they're already saying, hey, thanks, especially on some of the grant tips, things like that. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to provide that for nonprofits. They're all trying to do some good in the world.
Yes, it feeds the heart.
Feeds the heart. I'm Elizabeth Swan, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. In a short while, we'll get to hear my interview with Chip Schaefer, the director of sports performance for the Chicago Bulls. Up next, it's a question from one of our listeners. Okay, Tracy, you get to field this one. Why does Six Sigma use belts for levels of training?
That's a great question, and it's very simple, especially people that are not as familiar with that kind of training. So Six Sigma uses belt level training: white belt, yellow belt, green belt, and black belt. And actually white and yellow are optional sometimes. And they use it comes from the analogy of karate. And I want to believe it's because they're saying that you use karate-like moves to cut through waste in an organization and get rid of it. Right? So you're really being precise about getting rid of waste in organizations. So I really like that analogy. And ultimately, these belt levels help organizations really organize the levels of training that their employees are getting. So if you have a very large organization, it's helpful to understand what levels of training are required or that you would like certain groups to have. And so I think more than anything, it really does help organizations create some level of definition of training and what that level of training is equivalent to. So I really believe that's really what it's for. The downside sometimes is that people want to just get through the belts, and they're sort of checking the box, if you will, and just going through the training and not really leveraging the skills or tools and not using it to deliver value. And that's unfortunate. And, I think that sometimes Six Sigma belt level training gets a lot of criticism, but I feel like there are a lot of positives with that organization, that level of organization. You're going to find check the box attitude everywhere, no matter where you go. And so I don't think having those belt levels enforces that thinking or promotes it.
I like that aspect that you describe, where it's clear what level of understanding you have of Lean Six Sigma. And that's helpful. And it's been so long. It's been over 25 years, and I forget that this is martial arts. Or maybe it's kind of fun, that it's martial arts. But the downside that I also see, you described one of them, which is that check the box. But the other downside I sometimes see is people think you have to be some belt level to actually do improvement work, which is crazy because we've got really nice examples. In fact, Lynn Emmons just put a success story up, and she did the yellow belt and immediately started a project, and she got like 100% throughput increase on her audit process, which was amazing. So there's no need to think about those belt levels in terms of, I have to have certain belts to actually do anything. But I do like the fact that it clarifies, well, how much have you studied, or how much do you know, or sort of where are you in that sort of organizational level, which is helpful.
It is helpful. I find it very helpful.
And I'm just so used to it, I'm never going to change.
All right, it's time to announce the coupon code.
This code is for 20% off any of our Lean Six Sigma training and certification courses. That's white belt, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, and lean training.
So if you've joined us at the Just in Time Cafe, just use coupon code 20 Cappuccino. That's 20 CAPPUCCINO during checkout. Make sure to use it soon, since the coupon code will expire at the end of May. Coming up next, it's today's special. I know Elizabeth's been waiting for this moment. Elizabeth, can you give us a little preview of your interview with Chip Schaefer?
Of course I can. In his role with the Chicago Bulls, it's Chip's job to keep the players on the court, performing at their best for as many games as possible. But as we know, players get injured. So we found out about Chip because he had downloaded the Fishbone and the 5 Whys single module, and that led us to ask him for an interview to find out why. And he said he used the tools to analyze the root causes of injuries, which led to some interesting changes to players' workout routines. He's a great guy. It's a fascinating interview. Check it out.
And did you happen to score courtside tickets?
Working on it. Hi, and welcome to today's special. Today I'm honored to be speaking with Chip Schaefer, the Director of Sports Performance for the Chicago Bulls. Welcome, Chip.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth. Pleasure to talk to you.
As Director of Sports Performance, Chip has a doctorate in health science. He was head trainer during the Bulls' title run, that's 6 rings, from 1990 to 1998. He was Director of Athletic Performance with the LA Lakers, resulting in 5 rings from 99 to 2011. He spent some time with UC Santa Barbara, that's 2012, 2013, 2016. He's with the Sacramento Kings, again, Director of Sports Performance. And 2016 got pulled back into the NBA with the Bulls. And we learned about Chip when our client experience manager, Kelvin, noticed that he'd purchased a few of our single modules. He downloaded the 5 Whys and the Fishbone diagram training, and then FMEA, which stands for Failure Modes and Effects Analysis. And then he had signed up for the Yellow Belt training, and that got us curious as to how Chip was using Lean Six Sigma in his role with the Bulls. So Chip, just as a starting point, where did you hear about process improvement or Lean Six Sigma in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting question. Actually, the first time I ever became familiar and even heard those terms before, my oldest child, my son, Alec, has a BS in chemistry and an MS in chemical engineering. And as he was entering the workforce about a decade ago, I can't remember the first exposure to it, but I think when we were looking for, helping him with his job search upon graduating from grad school, we noticed a lot of the job postings were requiring or requesting it. And so that kind of got us curious and started looking into it and saw, how valuable that could be in sort of a lot of those process-driven professions, particularly when it came to what he was getting into, which was engineering and manufacturing type things. So that was my first exposure to it. And then I again was exposed to it while earning my doctorate. Some of the courses that related to management and organizational leadership and continuous quality improvement, things like that. Made a number of references to it, and for me, the light bulb just went off immediately, and I became increasingly curious about it. Just from some exposure, I was doing some things at work earlier this year, doing some presentations to members of our staff, and I thought, well, why not become even more proficient in it? And I started poking around online, trying to find maybe some quick courses to kind of refine my skills, because it had been a few years since I'd really delved into it, and that's where I found your website and got the courses. And then, as you said, Kelvin, who I think serendipitously is also from Chicago, kind of gave me a more personal email response and welcomed me into the programs, and we kind of hit it off, and I just did one course after another as my curiosity continued to peak with it.
That's great. I like that it started with the hunt for colleges with your son, and then also occurred in your own academic experience.
Right.
And brought you in.
Kind of validated it.
Yeah. So the modules you downloaded, the 5 Whys and then the FMEA, what made you decide to take those in particular?
Well, even though I was with the 5 Whys, for example, in Ishikawa diagrams, are you can just look at them, in a matter of minutes, discern what it basically is. I mean, the 5 Whys is a pretty straightforward concept, but the fact that I was presenting it with other staff members and even some management people, I wanted to be very precise and correct in it, and so I thought, well, why not take the actual course and get a very detailed description and do it by the book rather than sort of doing it generally. And a lot of these things, the interesting thing is, I think these things are, although they maybe were born in, on the manufacturing and engineering side of things, they're sort of creeping into healthcare, and I have no problem seeing why. I see an enormous applications and potential for it. In fact, I think it's has the potential to be a real difference maker.
Absolutely. Yeah, they all started in manufacturing, like you pointed out, but healthcare particularly really gains from it. So how'd you apply it? What'd you do when you did you just mentioned you worked with some of your colleagues there. What were you doing with them?
Well, there's a couple of applications. One thing we use it quite a bit. For example, as the season's drawing to a close here, and what I did last year was I looked at one of the key statistics in the NBA when you're on the healthcare side is that people look very closely at is games missed due to injury, and so you look at that, which is one total number. Every time a player misses a game due to an injury, that goes that's tracked, and at the end of the year, over an 82 game season, you have X number of those games that you've missed. And but there's a lot of different causes as why those occur, and so when you look to potentially, I hate to use the phrase prevent injuries because that's almost impossible to do, but I kind of look at kind of a risk management. So trying to decrease the risk of those things, you want to break those things into categories. So for example, acute trauma. If a guy goes up for a rebound and comes down on somebody else's foot and suffers a severe ankle sprain, there's not much you can do about that. These guys are big, massive people in a limited amount of space, and competing intensely, bodies collide and those things happen. But so that's that acute trauma. A lot of times those injuries aren't things that are very avoidable, but a lot of the other things, some of these, dynamic overuse or overload of tissue, where maybe some of these things can be, through a quality monitoring system of looking at different variables like their ability to, joint range of motion or ability of a muscle to produce force, quality of movement through different movement screenings and these things. You can kind of start to correlate changes in some of those variables with increases in injuries, and so those are some of the things that we wanted to do. So at the end of the season last year, I kind of created a Pareto diagram with those bar graphs, kind of illustrating where the greatest number of injuries occurred in what areas, and then we knew that's where we should kind of put our resources. And so once you've identified that, then you start looking at applying things like the 5 Whys and the Ishikawa diagram, looking at everything from the athletes themselves to their equipment to maybe some of the coaching strategies involving people and all the different variables that may contribute to those injuries, and then obviously in anticipation in a new year that the idea of using a failure mode and effects analysis can be a very powerful tool in trying to look at some of these things that you feel like have a high probability of occurring, and again putting the resources in that area, because some of these things even kind of migrate out even into the basketball side of things as well. And we were actually, to be honest, anybody that follows our team, we were in the midst of a 10-game losing streak at one point. And, when athletes, are having a lack of success like that, a lot of other things can happen. Tensions can build and people get frustrated and things like that. So it was actually using the FMEA that I wanted to create, and had our staff and our management in a room at the dry erase board, and I did it very much by the book. I downloaded your diagram on how to conduct one, and it was very successful. And so everything from the healthcare side to even the basketball side, all these things have become enormously powerful tools for us.
That's so impressive, and it's great hearing you throw out the terms, Ishikawa and the Pareto charts that resulted from your categorization of the risks for the players. So can you tell me some of the most high impact changes you made or improvements you made to just all the different categories you mentioned? Yeah,
so there's so many of these concepts that I became aware of, again through schooling and through my independent reading and stuff. And another one, I don't mean to continue to throw out acronyms and phrases, but some of these things when you see them for the first time, they can be very powerful to you because you just have that moment where the light bulb goes off and you just say, this is so neat, or this is awesome. I want to apply this immediately. And so for a few examples of some of the solutions, based on what we were seeing, things like the Plan, Do, Study, Act, PDSA is a real powerful tool. So there were some things, for example, there's an Italian system that's meant to reduce the risk of ankle sprains, which is obviously a high incident injury in the sport of basketball. And it's basically a balance wobble board, but that gives you biofeedback as you're trying to control the movement of the board. And so it helps with proprioception and things like that, and your ability of your these small intrinsic muscles of your ankle that help control and stabilize the joint. And so we applied the PDSA principles with that, where I don't go into any new technology saying, oh, this is the end all and be all. We're gonna run it through a system here. We're gonna evaluate its effectiveness, and at the end of the year, either you adopt it because it proved to be effective, or you discard it because you didn't, or you're not sure. So maybe you run it through another cycle. But that'd be one example of several.
Did you decide to use that one?
Yeah, no, we did. That was a very successful program that we've adopted, and we think that's been very impactful on reducing the risk of ankle sprains. And again, coming back to that original point of games lost due to injury, it's pretty simple math. When you add up the salaries of all of our players, and you divide by the number of games, 82, and you take a player's salary if they miss a game. If a guy was a guy that makes $8.2 million a year, every game he misses, that's theoretically $100,000 that you're not getting what you paid for. And so that people up the chain of command take a very serious look at that. And so when those things, those injuries start adding up with high-end players, the numbers add up too. And so anything you can do to prevent those things can be seen as really quite cost efficient too. Not that we don't base decision making on saving money just to not have a player miss a game, but those things are very important. So, and that's just one example of a number of things that we've utilized, from surveys and checklists and other types of analysis. It's really driven a lot of our clinical decision making.
There's a great book you might like called The Checklist Manifesto. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but I'm writing it down as we speak.
The author is Atul Gawande, Gawande, and he's a surgeon, and it's a great quick read. He's a great writer, and it's just the power of checklists, and he's basing it obviously starting in healthcare. So I see how that would resonate with you.
Right.
It's interesting. We had a podcast guest not long ago. She's from the hospitality, Starwood Hotels and Marriott, and they're kind of dealing with the exact same thing where it was, they're looking at people out on workman's comp or in, on the job injuries and trying to reduce those, and did pretty much exactly what you did,
right? Trying
to analyze what were the big sources and what were the changes.
Right.
So have you seen, I don't know if you've had the opportunity, but have you seen a change? Have you seen a reduction in, say, ankle injuries or anything you could measure in that way?
Yeah, no, we've had. I mean, it's almost impossible to get through an NBA season without having a few of those. But what's difficult to quantify, but then what you could just the sense that maybe the time lost isn't as great because the guy has already established some strong proprioceptive skills or good strength in those little intrinsic muscles that stabilize the joint beforehand. So maybe an injury that might have had a guy out for 2 weeks and miss 6 to 8 games now becomes 3 days and 2 games, and those things all add up too. And a lot of it, quite frankly, is the athletes themselves wind up embracing a lot of these things, and that sort of validates it too. So that factors in as well when they're the ones that really seem to. They're the ones that notice a difference. Where, like in the case of that assessment, that they noticed that their ankles felt more stable anytime it was overly stressed, or maybe had they not done that program before, they would have suffered a more severe injury. And they say, boy, I caught myself before it rolled all the way over or something, and so that really helps validate the whole process in their mind too.
So they've seen the difference and they're embracing the fixes you're putting through.
I like to think so. They're sure if they're not there, they're doing a great job of faking it with me.
Sure, you got to deal with that as well.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of a checklist you were using, or just sort of the sense of it?
Yeah, no. So yeah, all of these things are things we've adopted. And again, I think the checklist I sort of think of the stereotype is the airline pilot, check, and it's sort of these check and respond checklists. And so if we have a routine, one of the things that's happened, the big changes in the industry, like when I started with the Bulls, 28 years ago, I was a staff of 1. We have about 7 people now that do, that all kind of share the responsibility. A lot, because that's largely due to changes in the industry. There's a lot more emphasis on manual therapy, and so you just one person just can't do it. So, but what does happen in that instance is things can get lost in the shuffle. It's like, imagine a big kitchen where I say, I thought you made that sauce, or oh no, I thought you were doing it. So that's the value and importance of these checklists, because all 13, 14, 15 of our players have specific routines that we like them to do before practice or before a game. And so we have these things, these boxes that get checked that help ensure that something doesn't slip through the cracks and somebody doesn't get whatever it is, the muscle activation or the joint mobilization or the particular treatment that we want them to do before every game. And we're able to look at that checklist and ensure that they did, that there were no steps were missed at all.
Yeah. So what was the reaction of your colleagues, or I don't know how much the players are aware of you're using these techniques, but what's been the reaction to those around you to, I'm assuming you pulled people in to have them do the Ishikawa with you.
Yeah, very, very, very strong. It's so new. And I think a lot of people, when I shared these things with them, had the same reaction that I had upon being exposed to it. Like, wow, this is because, particularly in, just my background is both in the athletic training field. That's the healthcare side, and then the sports performance side is, sort of strength and conditioning. And these two fields are very much kind of integrated with each other, because I think as all through healthcare, there's been more of an emphasis on being proactive rather than reactive. I think that's kind of typical even of American medicine traditionally, is you wait till you have the symptoms before you go see the doctor. And there's been a big push, now on healthier lifestyles and eating a more nutrient-dense diet and increasing physical activity and trying to kind of ward off illnesses and disease rather than wait till you have it. So the same thing is happening in our field, and it was hugely, very, very positively embraced by everybody. I think they thought it was. I've continued to think that these are great concepts and they're real difference makers. What's really interesting, one of the just to continue to use these terms that I became exposed to. One of the big ones was even just the first time I'd heard this very simple phrase about 4 stages of group development, which is I think it's Tuckman was the originator of it, but this sort of the idea of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And so when I came back to Chicago, we had a staff, like I said, of 6, 7, 8 people that I was essentially, placed in charge of. And so a lot of these people, didn't know me before or whatever. And so you kind of go into it with an expectation of that, hey, we're not, nobody's expecting us to set the world on fire the first week we're here. Let's just get to know each other in the beginning and establish some trust. And, of course, in any group situation, there's going to be a little storming, and frankly, at the time, and I was, organization that I was with when I first became exposed to it, it was interesting because we were right in the middle of some fairly heavy storming before we kind of resolved those issues, and we could start to, to norm and perform at a higher level. And so, the group I've got here in Chicago now is a really outstanding staff that I'm very privileged to work with, all very talented individuals. But, it's not that you don't have your share of disagreements or have a different perspective on the best ways to resolve an issue, and that's fine. I think that debate, we're not looking for groupthink either, and I think that some healthy debate is an integral part of a group functioning at a high level. So, but no, it was received very well and continues to be. Even from the very beginning, just something as simple as asking everyone to write a mission statement or a value statement is a very powerful thing to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, no, those are great. That's great to hear you talk about it, and also that you've clearly got and had a hand in creating a culture where there is openness and people can disagree, because you're right, you're going to have stronger ideas and better risk assessment if you've got all the ideas on the table. So process improvement wise, what's next for you?
To grow and become more proficient at all of these things. I still think I'm a layman with it, quite frankly, and I'm learning all the time too with it. I don't think you can ever. One of the things I try to be a lifelong learner, and these things are still very new to me. And I think the more I do it, the better I get at it, or that we get at it. And so it's just a continued ongoing process that's really never ending. And so just through programs like your wonderful programs, very very user friendly, I might add. I think you just keep on plugging away and learn new things and get better at the things you already know, and don't stop.
Don't stop. I hear you. Well, kudos to you. This is impressive and fun to hear the actual application and that you've had an impact. And we'll keep in touch with you, see what evolves, because I would imagine you're not going to stop here.
Yeah, but feel free to check back with me in a year, and who knows what else is out there. And hopefully by then I'll become more proficient and maybe even get up to the next belt level with your program. And who knows? But this is a very important thing, and I think it's really the missing piece for a lot of people that are in this particular field right now. And I hate to almost lose a competitive advantage. So hopefully not too many NBA teams are listening to us right now.
No, we're going to keep them off the radar.
Yeah.
And I think I see the future for you. You're going to be the only black belt in the NBA.
Yeah, fine.
That'll be awesome. You've been listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. My guest today has been Chip Schaefer of the Chicago Bulls. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with our listeners, Chip.
My pleasure, Elizabeth. Great to talk to you.
You too.
This month, check out an expert excerpt by Ayesha Bashir. She came from Home Depot, and now she's at AMN Healthcare. And she has some great insights on how to launch a process improvement effort. And if you haven't yet, please sign up for the webinar, Introduction to PDCA, for a primer or refresher on this time-tested improvement model.
And tune into our next episode where I interview Leslie Henkler, a mentor for Shingo Prize-winning author Karen Ross, and an expert on getting the true voice of the customer. That's just 2 weeks away.
Thanks for joining us. We love having you here at the Just in Time Cafe.
Come back soon.